In a sport that has no loyalty, no characters, everyone is driven by money, players force their way out of football clubs just so their wags can go and shop in London, people peeing journalists off just to try and earn themselves a better contract or a better move, there are a few anomalies left in football, true people who properly embody what this brilliant sport is. There's a few last remaining fighting soldiers, and one of them is the biggest brick shithouse in world football right now, who is Luke 09 of Sunderland AFC. You might know him for his absolutely hilarious antics which go viral on Twitter all the time, riding players' backs halfway through professional football games, pause, kissing opposition players instead of squaring up to them, getting sent off about 20 seconds in his second ever Premier League game away at Manchester City. But his career is so much deeper than that. It's got him from right at the very bottom of the English football pyramid all the way to playing Europa League football next season. He's had truly one of the best rises in all of the English football pyramid over the last 10 years. So let me tell you the story of Luke 09. Let's start from the very beginning of his career, where he came through at Watford in London, spending a long time there, going out on loan to places like Wealdstone and never really breaking through into the first team for the Hornets, which ultimately resulted in his release in 2015. And honestly, for a lot of players in football, when you get released at a club that isn't right at the top level, you start to wonder, where is your level? Where do you find yourself in football? Do you have a future in the game? But Luke 09, as much as them thoughts were going through his head, he never let it stop him and overcame the hurdle, getting picked up by Wycombe Wanderers in the same season, where he spent over 4 years there, playing 100 games, getting 15 goals from attacking midfield, and this ultimately earned him a move to a massive football club in Sunderland AFC, massive football club, in their first season in League One in a long, long time. A massive, massive opportunity. A club that size hadn't been in a league that low for a long, long time. So Luke 09, when he heard the call, he did not waste the opportunity. He packed every single one of his belongings, chucked it in a car and drove all the way up to the northeast of Wearside, and this is where his Sunderland career begins. The start of his Sunderland career, however, was not very pretty. He recalls in interviews, in podcasts, talking about his debut where he was subbed off at half-time, seeing that a lot of negative thoughts are running through his mind. Was he at this level? Was he ever going to break through and become a starter for Sunderland? Was he going to have the true good years of his career at Sunderland? All these raced through his head, but he kept kicking on and finally got that breakthrough away in a 2-0 win against Shrewsbury, where he scored his first goal in red and white, and this was truly just the start of what was to come. But we really found out the true type of player that Luke 09 was in this season when around March period he was told to adopt a right back role, which is obviously a massive shift from the attacking midfield position that he had been playing for Wycombe, Watford and in the younger years of his career, and he surprisingly started to blossom in this role. Such a huge shift in position, and he absolutely hit the ground running in this role. Ended up earning Young Player of the Season at Sunderland in this right back position, just proving how versatile of a player he was, and he ended up becoming even more versatile of a player further into his career. But in this season's where we first truly saw his personality shine through, the first bit of shithousery, if you will. In the away leg of the playoffs in the second leg at Portsmouth at Fratton Park, Sunderland would draw 0-0 but 1-0 on aggregate, looking like they were on the brink of going to the playoff final and hopefully returning back to the Championship first time of asking, when Luke 09 was pushed into the Portsmouth end by one of the Portsmouth players, where he received a lot of kicks, digs, punches by the opposition fans, which looked like, honestly, it was a really nasty sight to see. I remember watching it on the telly and being worried that he'd been hurt. And it turns out that he was absolutely fine. In an interview after the match, he described this as just a bit of handbags, which at the end of the day, it's what football's all about. If you fall into a home and you don't expect to be helped back up and put back on the pitch, do you expect a bit of abuse? And he just took this on the chin and absolutely loved it. Unfortunately, Sutton didn't get promoted this season. We ended up losing the final against Charlton with a massive late winner. It was absolutely awful to be a part of. We lost in the very last minute, 2-1. It was Patrick Bauer. It was a really ugly sight to see. It was potentially one of the lowest points in Sunderland's history, but Luke 09 saw this as the bottom, and this was where he truly decided that he was going to stay at Sunderland and attack whatever was to come and finally return us back to our glory days, no matter how long it took. Sunderland went on to spend 4 seasons in the third tier of English football, which is absolutely awful for a club of that size, and it really did look like a club that was just rotten away. And despite all this, Luke 09 decided to stay, earning himself into the League One team in the season in 2021, also signing a 3-year contract extension in the same year, which turned out to be a massive, massive thing for Luke 09. And Sunderland in the next season went to finally end 4 years of absolute disappointment, gaining promotion back to the Championship in 2022 with a crazy playoff campaign, ending with a 2-0 win at Wembley Stadium against Wycombe Wanderers, where Luke 09 was an absolute constant throughout the SCFC team for the entire season. Confidence was high among Sunderland fans heading back into their first season, returning to the Championship. However, a lot of fans were also doubting whether or not Luke O'Nien was good enough to step up to the plate and be of that level of Championship football. Sunderland ended up having a brilliant return to the Championship, finishing in 6th place with players like Jack Clark and Amad Diallo shining through as the main stars of the team. And this is truly where I found out that O'Nien had another position up his sleeve during an absolutely crazy injury crisis at the defence heading into the playoff campaign. Luke O'Nien ended up finding himself at centre-back. I know, he's gone from a 10, which is where he was signed at Sunderland, from right-back, wing, all the way to centre-back, which is just absolutely crazy. And it turns out that this, in my opinion anyway, is actually his best position. This season was also where we saw some of the very best shithousery and best entertainment from Luke O'Nien when we saw him jump on Alex Scott's back at home at the Stadium Light against Bristol City, stopping him from going on a counter-attack. We had Carroll Road versus Norwich kissing one of the Norwich players, which is just like, what is seriously going on here? I know other footballers in the world are doing activities like this. It's incredibly strange, but incredibly brilliant to see. However, unfortunately, we did end up going on to lose the playoff semi-final against Luton due to just the lack of defensive depth that we had going in. We genuinely were playing wingers at centre-back and stuff going into the second leg against Luton, who were one of the most physical sides in the Championship with players like Tom Lockyer and Elijah Adebayo. We just couldn't match it at Kenilworth Road under the lights and ended up losing, meaning we spent another season in the Championship, which went on to be one of our most forgettable years in probably the last decade, to be totally honest, finishing 16th in the Championship, changing between managers, but most importantly appointing Michael Beale as our manager, which was just an absolute disaster from the start of all the way to the finish. And yet still through all this, where Sunderland maybe looked like they were going to hit a halt and that maybe Championship football was going to be where we spent a lot of our time for the next few years, Luke O'Nien stayed. He didn't even think about leaving. He stayed at the club. And I mean, as you all know where this story's going, it obviously ended up being the right decision. As in the 2024-25 season, Luke O'Nien was named club captain of Sunderland. And heading into this Championship season, Sunderland were an absolute force to be reckoned with, starting the season off with straight wins and straight clean sheets, winning and just not even conceding a single goal until away at Fratton Park. A 389-minute run of not conceding a single goal was ended by club captain Luke O'Nien heading it into his own net under absolutely no pressure when we were absolutely loving life, winning away at Portsmouth. We were top of the league, everything was going great, and he stuck it in his own net. And this is just the kind of weird stuff that has a lot of fans who criticise him, because it's weird errors like this that just seem to only happen to Luke O'Nien, and it's just absolutely typical. But Luke O'Nien ended up having an absolute brilliant season for Sunderland in 2024, playing under Reggie LeBrie alongside his defensive partner Chris Mepham, leading Sunderland into another playoff campaign in the Championship, with Premier League football finally on the horizon for Sunderland. And despite losing our last 5 games heading into the playoff campaign, we ended up getting ourselves to Wembley, 1 game away from Premier League football after an incredibly dramatic 2-legged tie against Coventry City, which ended obviously with the famous Dan Ballard goal at the Stadium Light. So we were back at Wembley. But this time in the world's most expensive football match against Sheffield United, the biggest game of Luke O'Nien's career, the biggest game in Sunderland's sort of recent 10-year history. It was absolutely massive. Luke O'Nien started this game as captain, but after 8 minutes, dislocated his shoulder and had to get subbed off in the biggest game of his life. The story, there's always hurdles when it comes to Luke O'Nien's story. But luckily, this didn't stop Sunderland, as Sunderland went on to win 2-1 in the playoff final with an equaliser coming from Eliza Mayenda, where we can see Luke O'Nien, a wounded Luke O'Nien, running over at the corner flag at Wembley, celebrating whilst his arm is literally in a sling. His shoulder is hanging off and he's still celebrating. Then boyhood fan Tommy Watson scored an incredible late winner, which was just incredible seeing. So to be part of that as a fan was just something that I'll just always cherish. And after 7 long seasons at Sunderland, Luke O'Nien had finally achieved his dream of taking Sunderland from League One back to where they belong. The initial goal that he set when he joined the massive football club, and he was finally back. Sunderland were back in the Premier League. And this is where you'd expect the story to end, right? I think for most people, most stories, it would end like this, especially with the fact that the Premier League had become this closed shop where you needed to spend at least 200 million to stay up, and players like Luke O'Nien would normally be discarded for new players who were good enough for the level to keep Sunderland up. But no, the story just doesn't end here. And Sunderland did spend nearly 200 million quid getting reinforcements for the Premier League, as it was just labelled as almost mission impossible, bringing in stars like Granit Xhaka, Robin Roos, Nordi Mukiele, and it really looked like this could be the end of Luke O'Nine's career at Sunderland, as he just wasn't getting any game time due to the sort of, well, just the incredible talents that were ahead of him, and also a lot of the fans were doubting whether he'd be able to make this step up. Even though he kept time and time again proving people wrong, this did seem like a step too far, and he just couldn't get near the Sunderland squad until one cold night in Liverpool where he made his Premier League debut against Liverpool in a 1-1 draw at Anfield in a brilliant result, and it looked like things, even if it was just a sort of consolation appearance rewarding his loyalty to Sunderland, people thought that this might just be it. But no, he went on to play a lot more games in the Premier League, going away to the Etihad, where we saw true Luke O'Nien shine through, where he got sent off almost instantly after coming on with an absolutely horrendous tackle. He went on to start a derby game at St James's Park, one of the games that he always looked forward to playing ever since he joined the football club, as he knew how important it was to the Sunderland fans, where he ended up giving the ball away, conceding an early goal at Anthony Gordon, all due to an error directly from Luke O'Nien, which he described as a moment that felt like the entire world swallowed him up. And yet still, after once again another incredible massive hurdle, Sunderland went on to win that derby game, and it was absolutely incredible scenes. And that might be where you think this story's got to end there, a massive high with Luke O'Nien being part of a double winning derby side. And now for where the story ends. For now, anyway. Sunderland play Chelsea at the Stadium of Light on the final game of the Premier League season. Luke O'Nien is starting, and what is so important about this game? Sunderland have a chance to qualify for Europe, potentially the Europa League. A lad who joined Sunderland in the depths of League One after playing for Wycombe Wanderers, being released from Watford, is now playing a game against one of English football's royalty in Chelsea. He is starting that game. And early on in the game, in the second half, he goes and gets himself an assist for Trey Hume as Sunderland beat Chelsea 2-1 at the Stadium Light, confirming their spot in Europa League football. Luke O'Nien has went from the depths of the third division of English football to get an assist directly contributing to Sunderland, the team he joined from minute one, qualifying for the Europa League. And that is where our story ends for now. But I promise you, it is not going to end there. I assure you, there are going to be some incredible stories for next season. Luke O'Nien is most definitely going to score a wee at AC Milan or something like that. And he's obviously going to step up to the plate once again, when everyone's going to be doubting him, saying there's no way he steps up to Europa League quality. And he will. He'll go and get man of the match against Juventus, against Leverkusen in knockout games, because he always proves everyone wrong. And people will always say negative things about him, but they'll always be proven wrong. And in my opinion, Luke O'Nien is truly a Sunderland legend, joining a club which was so down and out. It looked like such an unattractive team to join. Everything was on the down, and he joined knowing how big the opportunity was, and stayed through all the hardships, all the hurdles, became club captain, became an incredible personality who truly understand what it was to play for Sunderland, and led us all the way to playing Europa League football. And that is where our story ends for now. Luke O'Nien, a true modern day legend for Sunderland EFC.